Hi, and welcome to our fractions lesson 3. Today we get to look at section 4.2 in our textbooks, which talks about how fractions, decimals, and percents are just different ways of expressing the same thing. So we already know about these 100 blocks. This represents a whole. So if you start to color in just some of the squares, that is just a fraction of the whole, just part of the whole square. So we know that a fraction is part of a whole, that if you divide the numerator by the denominator, you get a decimal, and then if you times that decimal by 100, you get a percent. So let's think of an example. If you purchase a shirt at half price, let's cut this block in half, then this is only half as a fraction, or 0.5, or you could say 50% of the original price. So there's 3 different ways of representing the same value. We're going to turn some fractions into decimals and percents. So let's take this fraction and make an equivalent fraction so the denominator is 100. So to get 25 to 100, we can times that by 4. So if we times the denominator, don't leave out the numerator. And this will give us an equivalent fraction of 4 over 100. Now we can now take this and represent it as a decimal. If we already know that 400 over 100 would give us 4, then 40 over 100 should give us 0.4, then 4 over 100 should give us 0.04. So there's a little thought bubble there. So this should give us 0.04 as our decimal. Now if we were to turn this into a percent, we just go 0.04 times 100, and that gives us 4%. Great, let's try another one. In this case, we have an improper fraction, so let's change it to a mixed number. 4 goes into 11 2 whole times with 3 left over, keep the same denominator. This just tells us this whole number is 2 whole squares. So this is then 200%, we could say. So if we have 2 wholes plus 3/4, we can turn this into a decimal. 3/4 as a decimal, 2 and 0.75 is 3/4 as a decimal. So this gives us the decimal of 2.75. Great, and this as a percent, we just take the decimal, 2.75, and times it by 100 to give us 275%. Way to go! All right, let's try a different direction. Turning a decimal now into a fraction or a percent, we could take 5.25. This 5 means 5 wholes. So that's kind of like 5 100 grids plus then 25 squares out of the next 100 grid. So as a fraction, this would be 5 wholes and 25 out of the 100 squares colored. Or can we reduce this? Yes, we can. Both can be divided by 25, and it gives us 5 1/4. As a percent, we just take our decimal, 5.25, and times it by 100, and that gives us 525%. Great. Let's try another one. This one's a little bit trickier because we have this 5 here is in the thousandths place. Thousandths spot. So that means that instead of putting it over 100, we can put 375 over 1,000. So as a fraction, this is 375 over 1,000. Can we reduce this? Yes, we can. Both over 25 will give us 15 over 40. Oh, can we keep reducing this? Yes, we can. Both of these divided by 5 will give us 3 over 8. Now, if the first time you notice that 375 and 1,000 can both be divided by 125, then that would take you straight to the 3 over 8. But sometimes it's hard to recognize that, so we can do a few steps of reducing. This, as a percent, we just take our decimal, 0.375, and multiply by 100. So move the decimal places over twice, and that gives us 37.5%. Last example. This time we're going to turn percents into fractions and decimals. So let's try this. The first one says 175. So that's just like one whole 100 grid plus 75 squares out of the next grid. So as a decimal, we can go backwards this time and take 175 and divide now by 100. Because if we want to go to a percent, we times by 100. So if we want to take away the percent, you divide by 100. And this will give us 1.75 as our decimal. Now as a fraction, we could show 175 over 100. So it's just the percent value over 100. And can this be reduced? Yes, it can. They can both be divided by 25. And that gives us 7 over 4, or you could represent this as a mixed number, 1 3/4. All right, let's try the next one. 0.20 as a decimal, 0.2 divided by 100, because we're going backwards now, gives us 0.002. And then as a fraction, we take that percent and put it over 100, and we can rearrange this so we have 2 over 1,000. Because if we move this decimal place over 1, we can move this invisible decimal place over 1 as well. So can this be reduced? Yeah, they can both be divided by 2, and we get 1 over 500. 12 3/4 can be put into a decimal by splitting them up a little bit. So we have the 12 and we have the 3/4. So 12% divided by 100 will give us 0.12. And now 3/4 we know equals 0.75. But even though this is the decimal, that's still the percent. So we need to still divide this by 100. 0.75% divided by 100 is 0.0075. All right, for this decimal, we just put these two together. 0.12 plus 0.0075 gives us 0.1275. And for the fraction, we can take that decimal, 0.1275 over 100, but we see that this 5 is in the 10,000ths place. So we can put 1275 over 10,000. And can we reduce this? Yeah, we can. We can divide both by 25, which gives us 51 over 400. All right, there you go. Now, this lesson is tough. Don't be discouraged if you don't get it right away. It's all about progress, not perfection, and we're going to practice more in class tomorrow.